Baby Sparks by A_bisexual_dumbass. Please note, sexual assault is a prominent plot point for the entire story, as is not having the ability to choose whether or not to keep a pregnancy. Be forewarned. Notes. Set about a year after the movie. Mikey is 16, Leo and Donnie are 17, they'll turn 18 at some point in the fic, and Raph turned 19 a couple months ago. Chapter 1. Soup and Dreams. No, Donatello, unable to think clearly at the moment, said. No. That's impossible. Impossible. Dontron, Leo had responded. I know that it should be impossible, but... No, I don't think you understand, Nardo. Donnie shivered, remembering what happened only hours before. If I accept that is even a possibility, it's not. That's enough. Donnie stood up and stormed out of the med bay, or at the very least tried to, ending up, instead, with a quick limp, and into the quiet, comforting buzz of his lab. They sat in the chair at their work table and dissolved into quiet tears. He, despite his insomnia, fell asleep in minutes. He gasped. Where was he? He was in a dark room on a table, legs spread, arms tied underneath the table just tightly enough to be uncomfortable, and completely nude. What? He noticed two people in a corner and tried to sit up to see them better, failing miserably. The people were whispering about something. Damn boss and his obsession with turtles. He realized that his battle shell had been removed, sending a spark of fear through their core. They were exposed. Excuse me, gentlemen. A slight quaver in his voice surprised him. He was usually better at hiding his terror. They turned around quickly, allowing him to see what was behind them. It can speak? Glowing liquid like that of mosquitoes and vials and surgical instruments. You said it'd be out for at least 3 hours. He's not an it. Well, hey, we gotta finish it up quick. They approached him, fast, holding something behind their backs, instilling far more terror into the turtle than he thought possible. They tried to back up as one spread his legs a bit further, and the other used the device they had to simulate a bite on their neck. He fell in and out of consciousness, seeing and hearing only snippets. Get it pregnant. An uncomfortable pressing near his tail. The sharp sting of a needle. Safety of the children. The white-hot kind of pleasure that Donnie had always thought unpleasant. The bubbling feeling of mystic powers. A flash of blue, knocking the two people out. He reawakened to Leo standing over him and staring with a worried look. Donnie felt sweaty, and between their legs was damp. He felt used and torn and so exhausted. He shivered, trying to draw into himself, but found himself unable due to the rough rope around his wrists. Then they came to the realization of what happened to them. A dark blush spreading across their face as they struggled against their ropes. He gasped away, struggling against an orange-yellow blanket that had been put around his body. They began hyperventilating, tears springing out of their eyes. I can't move. I can't escape. The usually comfortable buzzes and beeps of his lab seemed too much. The texture of the blanket more than he could handle, and the low lights too bright to open his eyes. A choked sob racked their body. When they broke free, they withdrew into their shell as far as they could, pulling their legs close to their body, rocking back and forth quietly, wrapping their fists against their knees. Donatello was still crying and slightly shaking when someone came up behind him, tapping his shoulder thrice. A near-silent growl was all they got in return. Donnie, baby, You gotta tell me what happened, April said behind him, worry heavy in her voice. Leo seemed worried, but you said that you should be the one to tell me. Donnie's breath hitched slightly, but he spun his chair slowly towards April nonetheless. She was their favorite sibling, after all. She deserved to know. He sucked air in through his teeth and attempted to speak. His tongue seemed too heavy. The words he was trying to speak behind a wall sucked out of him like air. They raised their shaky hands and sloppily signed, "I was kidnapped." They were heading home from a mission. They were all injured, Donnie somehow the most of the four. Leo was grumbling about how, "We saved the world twice. You'd think the villains would give us a break." Donnie went quiet, as he did when he was in pain. He was lagging behind. Someone managed to sneak up behind him, hit him over the head, and everything went black. But it might have resulted in a pregnancy, Donatello finished. That's what they had been talking about. "How is that even possible?" April yelled. Donnie winced, having to grasp their wrist to stop the stupid... Is there any way to check?" April asked, quietly. Donnie nodded, averting their gaze and wiping his eyes underneath his mask. They grabbed their tech bow before stopping for a moment. He flipped his goggles down over his eyes and looked down again. He almost began to cry. "Donnie?" They grabbed at their bow staff again, pressing a series of buttons and standing up as straight as they could. The glowing purple scanner seemed too bright, but Donnie determined he would fix that later. After a minute without any conversation between the siblings, slowly, quietly, Donatello asked a question of April in his raspy, tear-soaked voice. What will I even if I am pregnant?" April thought for a moment, but before she could answer, a low beep told Donnie the scan was finished. He pulled up the results of the scan and promptly leant over his desk and threw up in a trash can. I can't do this." He was shaking again. He fell back into their chair, curling into himself. April grimaced. "Hey, Dee?" April, They shivered, blinked, and wiped their eyes, before dropping into their normal low deadpan. "There's a high likelihood that I am hosting life. Unfortunately, I'd say there are possibly more issues. I need to talk to Leo." April blinked. Donnie gently dropped his head on April's shoulder and slowly typed a command into his tablet, sending for his twin, all the while ignoring the quiet drip of blood down the side of his leg. It took forever for Leo to join them in his lab, but he entered with something in his hand, a lab coat and a stethoscope, reminiscent of a doctor. "I've come bearing gifts." Leo sounded tired. Or worried? "Flavorless juice for my favorite twin?" "Come in, Leo." Donnie came off as more exasperated than he was trying to. He was too tired to care. "And we're not twins. We aren't even the same species." Leo joined them, sitting on the table in front of his twin. He scrunched his nose at a scent. Vomit, he realized. Donnie remembered to take out the trash, quickly typing another command into their tablet. "I really must automate this," he muttered underneath his breath, ignoring the silent stares of his family members. After the bottom slid out and a soft lavender scent was sprayed around the bin, Leo cleared his throat. "Ahem. So, you sent for me, Tella?" Yes, I did." Donnie paused, taking a minute to collect their thoughts. I'll send you any necessary information, but more importantly than the high possibility that there are possibly other pressing matters. Leo winced. Donnie shook their head to clear it. I definitely have some type of head trauma and, a mild concussion. My ankle is sprained, likely from the fight earlier today. The top layer of my shell is at the very least damaged. The only reason I'm up and moving about is luck at this point. There's one... Wait. Leo stopped him. He seemed concerned. You have a concussion and shell damage, and you just ran out? Donnie just shrugged. I mean, I was mostly unaware of it until I called for you. He grinned, his vision going fuzzy temporarily. And, you're the medic. I thought you would probably figure it out. He knew he was grasping at straws, but he didn't have the time or energy to think of anything better, especially whilst actively bleeding out through his biker shorts. I swear to the big pizza in the sky, Leo whispered before drawing in a shaky breath. Donatello, you barely let me look at you, and you felt the need to call me over. Serious Dr. Leo is out now. April's phone notification broke an angry stare off, prompting the soft shell to look over her shoulder. A text from Sunita, heart, 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 that April snatched away from the boys before they could read it. Leo took the opportunity to scoop his smaller brother up, much to Donnie's chagrin. Leo, put me down, they hissed. Unfortunately for Donatello, their brother felt the blood on their shorts, saw the slow drip towards the floor. Unfortunately for Donatello, their brother noticed their shiver, heard the quiet, pained whimper. Unfortunately for Donatello, his brother, his twin, cared about him. But, unfortunately for Leonardo, his brother passed out in his arms before he could say anything. He was on a table in a dark room. The men were approaching him. He didn't have his battle shell. He backed up, standing flush against a wall. Idiot. The men seemed to blend together. They pinned him against a wall, pushing their mouths against his as he struggled. He was hyper-aware of the brick wall on his soft shell as the men pushed their tongues through his teeth. His eyes blurred with tears as the men groped him, rubbing his tail and prodding the slit close to its center. Stop, he thought, trying helplessly to break free from the much stronger people in front of him. He reopened his eyes, only to come face to face with himself. Himself, but hard-shelled. Himself, but muscular and almost as tall as Raphael. Themself, their eyes, their eyebrows, and their colors. He was pinning himself against a wall. He pinned himself against a wall and bit himself thrice. Once on the neck, once on the head, and, most painfully, once on the very edge of his shell. He dug his claws into the shell of the much smaller turtle. Please stop, they whispered. The pain was almost unbearable, but penetration was worse. He thought that he felt something tear. Pathetic. The distaste he had for the feeling didn't prevent the low moan that slipped through his teeth when his duplicate hit him just right. It also didn't prevent the orgasm he experienced, giving him a hit of euphoria as his back arched, toes curled, and claws dug deep into the wall behind him. The turtle in front of him came soon after, filling him with uncomfortably warm fluid. The turtle in front of him pulled out, coming to stand next to him. Donnie could barely stand, awkwardly leaning in against the wall for support, all the while dripping blood and bodily fluids. And then he noticed Leo, standing in front of him, staring, a disgusted look on his face. You disgusting piece of broken, outdated, useless tech. They sank to their knees, letting out a sob. He looked back up, only to see the other Donatello following Leo, looking down at him with a cold grin. He just sat there, lay there, shaking and crying. Donnie? Donnie, please wake up. Donatello woke up with a pounding headache, being shaken by their youngest brother while his blue twin pried the two apart. He slowly opened his eyes, wincing at the light. Can someone turn the lights down? He coughed and pushed himself onto his elbows, unnoticed tears welling in the corners of his eyes. Mm-hmm. Donnie nodded, quietly. Donatello, when were you going to tell me that you were literally bleeding out? Asked serious Dr. Leo. Donnie glanced down at himself and began to cry. They were nude, their legs slightly spread, probably by circumstance. Their shorts were blood-soaked, and that was just the way they must have been laid, they realized belatedly, somewhere in the back of their far-too-loud mind. He curled in on himself, the way he had tried when Leo had first seen him. The pain sent shivers down the back of their shell. The adrenaline must have worn off. Donatello shivered again, before simply pulling his knees to his chest. Someone get me a hoodie, please. Yes, sir, Mike yelled from the corner after turning off the light. I tried, Donnie whimpered. Can you, make some soup? Leo had asked after peeking out the door. He looked shocked when he saw Mikey, and it was clear that he was making something up on the spot. Luckily, he had already started soup, chicken and rice, easy to make, and a favorite when his brothers were stressed. And so, he had the chance to eavesdrop. Sure, you want these? He put on a cheery facade, offering the two jackets, Donnie's favorite purple hoodie, and a replica of the purple dragon's jacket that had been given to him as a gift, the only difference being the lack of symbol on its back, to his blue big brother, who took them and shooed him off. Mikey was the optimist, the artist, and the chef of the group. More importantly, he was the one who had researched and researched and researched and tested and researched some more psychology. He had helped all of his brothers get through some of the trauma of the Krang, and before that, the Shredder. He had listened to them cry about their father's absence. He had even listened to his father's woes from time to time. The problem was that his brothers still saw him as a baby. He was only 16, but he had saved the world twice, and had been the family therapist since he was 8. He had spent the years prior learning how to get them all to open up to him. It thus hurt him when he heard the conversation through the door. Leo seemed to be looming over him, and he seemed disappointed, almost disgusted. Donnie was sweating. Donnie was shaking again. Donnie was crying again. Donnie was hyperventilating. He felt pathetic. He was pathetic. Donnie was having a panic attack. He'd had a few before, but so had Leo. They all had, especially after the Krang. His knowledge on the situation didn't mean that he felt prepared. Hey, Don? Leo was scared. He crouched in front of his twin, offering a hand out. Don, you'll be okay. I'm Pathetic, he whispered so quietly that Leo almost didn't hear him. What? A stupid idiot. Their voice shuddered, tears dripping down their face. Dawn. Leo's voice shook a little more than what could be ignored, but he still hoped that Donnie wouldn't notice. A disgusting, broken piece of... They coughed and gasped, but they still managed to spit out the words. Useless tech. He seemed to be trying to claw his skin off, digging into his skin like he wanted to turn himself into confetti. Leo grabbed his hands. Hey, Don, can you tell me what you need? Donnie looked into his eyes, and he looked broken. His brother, his twin, the genius who pretended to be overconfident, just like Leo did, looked like he had given up. Given up like he had, like he was going to die. I need to talk. Don and Nutella paused like their brain was buffering. About what happened today? Leo nodded. It would be too much for Mikey, I think. Make sure he doesn't hear? Leo peeked out the door, only to come face to face with Mikey. Can you, make some soup? He just said the first thing he thought of, but he thought his slightly older twin would definitely appreciate soup right now. Sure. You want these? He grinned, thrusting the 2 jackets toward Leo, who took them, shooing him off. Donnie was pretty banged up after a fight with the meat sweats, who had gotten his hands on some kind of mutant with super strength, somehow. Their brothers were all laughing and joking, but they had gotten quiet. He was starting to fall behind them, a definitely sprained ankle requiring him to lean heavily on his bowstaff and slowing him down even further. He didn't hear the men coming up behind him. His slow limp and the music he was using to distract himself gave him a disadvantage. The men hit him over the head with a baseball bat, hard, and he passed out. He had woken up in a dark room on a wooden table, completely nude, legs spread an almost painful amount, arms tied underneath the table. There was an IV drip in his shoulder. His head felt like it was full of cotton balls. He could see 2 mutants in a corner, a green glow in front of them. They were speaking in a hushed tone. He could only make out bits and pieces of their conversation, only it's injections? Hush. Nothing even interpretable. He struggled, only to find that moving hurt. His vision went fuzzy for a few moments, a headache's low thrum pounding against his skull. He tried to suppress a whimper at the pain, failing miserably. The men turned around, grabbing something from behind them, their faces surprised. One of them, a short, older-looking fox, exclaimed, "You told me it would last for at least 6 hours. Well, we should probably finish it up then, fast," said a lanky, younger mutant who looked like he might have been a weasel. They rushed over to him, holding a rusty device that looked somewhat like a bear trap. "What are you going to do with that?" he stuttered, trying to back up, resulting in a low, pained groan. The men grinned, and the younger mutant laughed. "You're gonna be fun." Leo stopped. His brother was lying, tied to a table, bleeding, shaking, crying. He was sweaty and flushed and begging the 2 mutants on top of him to stop please. And he was sobbing, and one of them said, "It's definitely pregnant now," and chuckled. They were laughing. They were laughing about raping his brother. Leo hopped down from the rafters, landing behind them silently. He created a portal, felt the bubble of energy course through him, and pulled them through. He aimed the second portal at a wall, and they fell through sideways. Hot? They couldn't have even twitched before Leo had knocked the two of them out with the hilts of his katanas. Soup. Leo slowly approached Donnie, who let out a quiet, frightened hiss. "Hey, hey, hey," Leo whispered. Donnie, it's Leo." Someone was approaching Donnie, and he let out an involuntary hiss. "Hey, hey, hey," they whispered. Donnie, it's Leo." He slowly opened his eyes, a whimper slipping through his lips. They saw Leo's worried face above them. He felt his face get warm. How much had Leo seen? He struggled against his bindings, the rough ropes rubbing painfully against his ankles and wrists, only adding to the awful pain he felt in his hips whenever he tried to move. Mikey had grabbed 2 bowls of soup after his 2 middle brothers had gone silent, pushing a, hopefully convincing, grin onto his face while he entered the med bay. He looked at his brothers, huddled in the center of the room, on one of the cots, and smiled, genuinely this time. At least they were talking about their problems, even if they were hiding them from him. Donnie was wearing both hoodies, knees up to their chest, head cradled in their hands. Leo was next to them, arm around their shoulders. Mikey walked up to the 2 of them. "Soup?" Notes. Guess who did their surface level, don't expect too much from me. Research on turtle mating and biology. This dumbass, that too. Guess who didn't? The kidnapper guys. Though they probably weren't expecting a soft-shell turtle. Also Dream Donnie, the asshole with a hard shell that kind of looks like Don. But he's just initiating mating for a hard-shell turtle, which he is. Also, I'm sure I did a bad job at characterizing Donnie. I relate to him so bad. I have many of his mannerisms, and I am also autistic, like him. But I might have brought it into OOC territory. I am also aware that my writing style is a lot. Repetition is I'm a creative writer with a very specific write style thing. You might be able to tell that I was pantsing it. I'm really just writing when I have time, and I hate planning things when I could just start. This was inspired by a variety of scenes from so many different fics, and I can't really name one or any. Anywho, hope this wasn't the absolute worst. Have a great rest of your day. I hope you had fun listening to this. It took me forever to record. Anyways, bye!